Hello, everybody. Today I am here with Ahmed Bader. Welcome to our little show here, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So now you are somebody who wears a lot of different hats in the creative world. So I don't think I even want to attempt to introduce you myself because you do so many things from being a new author. You're an artist yourself. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background and your own experiences in the arts?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm an Iraqi American poet, social entrepreneur, and former refugee. So my work is centered around the creation of different spaces for displaced young people to be able to share their stories and their creative expressions in ways that feel authentic to them. And creating those spaces with this kind of idea in mind that young people, especially displaced young people, should be able to share their own stories on their own terms. So I'm the founder of Narratio, which is an online platform and organization that publishes the work of young people from all over the world, whether that be poetry or photography or stories or films. And we work with young people from all over the world with a focus on displaced populations. We have our flagship program is the Narratio Fellowship, where we work with a group of resettled refugee youth in the US every year. And guide them through a series of storytelling workshops that end up, culminating in an exhibit or a performance. We've been doing that for a couple of years, and I've also done podcasts, and I've also had my own artwork and exhibits travel around the U.S. So podcasts, exhibits, and then the organization, which is kind of like the umbrella for all of the work. And then my debut book will be out in a couple of weeks. It's called While the Earth Sleeps, We Travel, stories, poetry, and art from young refugees around the world. So I traveled to Greece and Trinidad and Tobago and mainly in Syracuse to kind of collect the work for it. And it just features the expressions from displaced young people from all over the world, really meditating on this concept of home, but also complicating what we think about normally when we just hear that word refugee, and then thinking about the different ways that stories of displacement are often limited by just kind of the tragedy that caused that displacement. And so this book is a way of trying to go beyond that and allow displaced young people to share their stories, in comprehensive ways, and again, in ways that feel authentic to them. So that's what I'm up to.
That's all, right?
Well,
That's an incredible resume you've got going on there. How did you wind up in Syracuse? What is it that brought you here, and what's that connection been like for you?
yeah, so I was invited to SU to do a lecture and a workshop a couple of years back by Professor Eileen Shell. And so I went, she was very, very generous to invite me, and I went and did the lecture, did the workshop. The workshop was at the Northside Learning Center, and it was a snow day. We weren't sure if anyone was going to show up, but we had like 30, 40 folks, and we had a wonderful storytelling workshop. And it was at that workshop that I connected with Professor Bryce Nordquist at SU, who's also very involved at the Northside. And we just kind of kept the conversation going. And for the past couple of years, I've been doing these workshops, but I wanted to kind of create a program that really formalized the workshops in ways that were cohesive. We wanted to create something that, focused on a specific group of young people over a longer period of time. And so that's something I've been interested in doing for a while. And so Professor Nordquist which has been a wonderful partner and collaborator, was super encouraging. We put together a proposal, and then the fellowship cohort, the initial kind of pilot program was in Syracuse, and we just wrapped up the second cohort. We did a hybrid in-person and virtual model led by Professor Nordquist and an amazing filmmaker at SU, who was our artist in residence, Anna Vidya. So it all started with that initial workshop on that snow day, and then just never looked back.
That's an incredible story. A snow day in Syracuse, like
Yeah.
a perfect combination of the elements there. Um, So you have also worked with our Teen Council alum, Khadijah Sharif. Tell us how you two ended up working together and what her involvement has been with this project.
Yeah, so Khadija, as you know, is incredible. She's really just one of the most remarkable humans I've ever met. We met through the Narratio Fellowship, so she was part of that inaugural class, and she was one of our wonderful fellows, and so we met through that program, and have been able to. I've had the pleasure of working with her since then.
That's fantastic. And the two of you also did a performance at the Met together, correct? Along with the other fellows. Can you describe that performance a little bit for us? And how did that come about?
Yeah, so the focus of the fellowship is to really, give displaced young people a chance to explore the fullest range of their experiences. And so every cohort is focused on a specific medium. That specific medium is usually always tied to the artist in residence that's leading the program and their area of expertise. And so since I was the first artist in residence last year, the focus was on poetry. And so we still explored other forms of storytelling, whether that be, podcasting or photography or what have you. And we had guest speakers come in and do those workshops, but the focus was on poetry. And one of our main partners in the program was the Ancient Near East Gallery at the Met. And so what we did was each fellow selected an object from the galleries and then rewrote the label of that object as a poem, but taking into account their own personal experiences and identities and histories. And by the end of the program, we all traveled, or at least the end of the first month residential part of the program. The program continues for a year. Uh, we traveled to New York, and the fellows ended up performing those poems at the Met, at the Royal Assyrian Court. So it just was such a beautiful experience, a magical experience, really, just to see, the not just the poems, but alongside the objects, but also just to have the fellows really enter the space and interact with it, not just as visitors, but as poets, as cultural producers. And that's something we tried to carry forth. And so since that performance, the fellows have performed at the UN. They've had a photography exhibit and also performed at Christie's. And in addition to local performances in Syracuse, they had an exhibit at the Community Folk Arts Center's HEFAC. And the program has continued to grow in that way. And so that's how that initial experience happened.
It's really extraordinary to hear about the whole impact that this fellowship has had. So how did you go from exploring all of these mediums through performance into putting into your first book? What was that process like for you? How did you decide that you wanted it to now become a book, or was that always an idea that was in your mind?
I think I wanted something to really for the work to culminate within. I think having a book is such a powerful medium, or just the book itself, something you can hold and something that the folks you're working with can hopefully feel proud to contribute to. And I've been so privileged to have been able to tell my story with so many around the world, and that wouldn't have been possible without mentors, without folks that even made me realize that I had a story to tell. And so I think with this project, I wanted to, obviously with those workshops, to really kind of put in one place all of the different things that came out of those workshops, but also give folks a chance to introduce themselves to the world on their own terms. And so whether it's workshop in a camp in Greece, or one of the Narratio Fellowship workshops at SU or at the Norsat Learning Center, or a workshop in Trinidad and Tobago, there are all these different experiences that are so rich and so complex, and I wanted to kind of put them all in one place, and hopefully put them together in a way that's cohesive, and a way that folks are proud of. So I've had the idea, now and then it's come up, but I really wanted to kind of have a collection, that really captured the complexity of not necessarily just displacement, but of individuals who happen to be displaced. I think there's a key distinction there. The book is not about displacement. It's just about creative young people who are expressing themselves and who happen to be displaced. So I think that's a key distinction that I hope the book achieves.
Are there any selections from the book that really stick out to you the most, that have left a lasting impact on you personally?
I think all of them, all of them. I think what really is, and this is another thing too with this book, it's not kind of your simple anthology. Um, there's autobiographical moments. I feel connected to every single piece there because it came out of a workshop or an interaction or an interview, right? So uh, I feel personally connected to all of the pieces, and my own work is represented as well. I have my own poems, and so yeah, it's hard to pick one or the other. I think the whole experience of just, meeting folks and connecting with folks and, you know, asking them how they want the world to take in their work and then hopefully giving them the opportunity. And I hate that idea of also of just like help, like just giving something, giving someone something they don't have already. I think all of this is just an activation process. Folks already had this expression. They already had these experiences. It was just kind of having, the chance to express it in this way. And so, yeah, so no specific piece. I think the entire process, which is so rich and fulfilling. And I hope that I did the expressions and the stories and everything in between justice.
I'm sure you did, and I can't wait to get my own copy of it. I've already pre-ordered my book, and I hope everybody watching will do the same. But so now you are a published author, you run your own organization, and you've also been running this fellowship. What is next on the horizon for you? What are some of your other career ambitions?
Yeah, well, I think I'm excited to continue the work. Narratio is growing, and we're really excited about, partnerships that are coming up. We're excited about this cohort, this new cohort of fellows, and really finding, I think what's so exciting about a program in its second year and approaching its third year is that you get to kind of learn about what worked and what hasn't, and then just continue improving the program. And so I'm very excited about that process, very excited to continue working with Professor Nordquist and the Narratio team. And also, I think, I want to keep telling stories. I want to keep sharing stories. So, um, my joke around my dad was like, okay, well, what's the next book? What's the next thing? And I'm like, well, give me some time. I'll think about it. So thinking about what that can be and any future projects, but just it's been such a privilege to be able to work on this project, to be able to introduce it to the world during this time. Yeah, very, very excited. We'll have the launch. The launch is going to be we haven't announced it yet, so maybe by this time this is out, it will already be announced. We'll announce it in a couple of days, but the launch event will be virtual, of course, because everything is now. But it'll be on the 12th, October 12th, the day before it comes out at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be hosted by the Strand in New York. I'll be in conversation with Ben Stiller, and we'll talk about the book and have it be kind of the introduction of the work to the world. And so I'm very, very excited to make that happen and to just kind of, I feel like I've just held on to it for so long, and now I just need to let it go and let it do its thing and let it live its own life. So very excited about that.
And what has Ben Stiller's involvement been with this project?
So he wrote the foreword for the book, which was just so exciting and such an honor. He's been a great friend and supporter over the last couple of years, and I'm so excited to be able to kind of include his voice in there. And I think, he is as such an interesting intersection now, because obviously his storytelling work and his filmmaking and his acting is, speaks for itself. But over the last few years, he's been an incredible advocate for refugees and folks that are displaced. And so it was really a wonderful pleasure and honor to be able to include him in this, and speaking about that intersection, and then, our own intersection a few years ago, and how we met and how our friendship has grown.
That's wonderful to hear, and I'm glad that you've gotten so much enthusiastic response and support for this project, and I can't wait to see where it goes once it's officially out in the world. So being that you have accomplished such an extraordinary amount of things in your own career, and you're fairly young yourself too, what kind of advice do you have for other young creatives who are maybe wondering how to approach these kinds of career ambitions or these big projects and they don't know where to get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it starts with your own story and your own kind of personal expression, and then asking, okay, well, here's my story. Here's, my community. where is that bridge between them? And I always like to ask myself this question of how can I empower myself by empowering those around me? And so I think that question and finding an answer to that question is a great place to start. But also, not all of us are comfortable sharing our own story and kind of engaging with it in such a deep way, which is completely fine. So I think but ultimately, if it's not your own personal story, it's creating spaces for other personal stories to exist and to flourish and to grow. And so in my experience, that's been the most fulfilling and the most helpful thing as I started to think about these projects and where I wanted them to go and kind of as the vision grew and evolved.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And before you go, can you show us the hard copy of your book?
Oh, goodness. Here it is.
Show it
Here
off.
it is.
Ah, can't
It's a real thing.
Well, congratulations. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's always such a wonderful time speaking with you. And I hope we'll be able to cross paths again at the Everson somewhere in Syracuse.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you.